If you're anything like most of the CEOs that I get to work with, then you're really homed in right now on objectives, because we teach in our program how to create more accountability in your businesses by leveraging tools such as the scorecard. Dr. Steven, looking forward to digging in on this episode, part 2 today.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business, so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Steven Franson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Steven Franson.
And we are in the midst of a two-part series on a topic that, Dr. Steven, I think this has been on the list for years to get out. We're talking about creating a system around bonusing and bonus structure. If you're tuning in now and this is the first episode, I'm actually going to ask you to go back and listen to the other episode before. If you're on the treadmill already, just put your feet on the side, click the one right before it, listen to that one, then listen to this one, because it'll actually make a lot more sense. We're going to build on exactly what we covered in the previous episode. In the previous episode, we set the framework by answering several questions regarding bonusing, right? So we're specifically talking about management in two different ways when it comes to bonusing. Management by expectations and agreements, which is what we covered in the previous episode. In this episode, it's management by objectives. So we're answering questions is what's the right way to pay a person, specifically paying and bonusing a person, basing it on the role and getting the right role and the right person in the right role and compensating them right. That's what we're covering. So we talked about in the last episode, in the previous episode, basing it on that top line revenue as the quarterly bonus that's being based on a top line revenue goal, base case, best case goal. We talked about how to set that. We talked about the budget. When should we bonus? We talked about that being depending upon the goal. We talked about how much should we bonus? We talked about that should be based on your budget. And then we talked about who's eligible for a bonus, and that has to do with the team and the time and where they're at in the business. Dr. Steven, this episode today, we're going to be getting into more of a transactional model, more transactional approach, which is the management by objectives. And if you're anything like most of the CEOs that I get to work with, then you're really homed in right now on objectives, because we teach in our program how to create more accountability in your businesses by leveraging tools such as the scorecard. Dr. Steven, looking forward to digging in on this episode, part 2 today.
It was super timely, so it is something that is probably, on the top 5 list of like questions that we get asked as coaches. Our clients are constantly, just this morning fielded an email on compensation and specifically some type of incentive or bonus system for like an office manager or a COO. And it's a super common question that we get. We've addressed it over the years, but now we're really systematizing it. And it's all part of our Remarkable Money program project that we've been working on, right? So, we have partnered up with our CFO team, and basically we've just created the financial snapshot complement to our vital signs performance metrics tracking program, right? So most chiros have let's say a loose grip on, their performance metrics in their business. Chiropractors, hey, how's it going? Great, really? So, oh yeah, what do chiropractors know and what do they talk about? How many do you adjust a week? How many newies? And what your collections are, right? So those would all be, the super high level metrics that most chiropractors know. Of course, if you're a remarkable CEO, especially if you're in our Remarkable CEO podcast, program, your metrics, right? Your performance metrics on a granular level, because we know the metrics of the matrix, right? They tell the story. They tell the story of the human beings that you've been trusted with, So when you start looking at the metrics like it's the matrix that tells you where you should be investing your time, energy, focus, and money to drive growth and improvement, your metrics look a little bit different to you, right? So the Remarkable Money program will do the same thing, but for your finances, because if we're going to be remarkable CEOs, man, we got a fiduciary responsibility to drive these businesses in a way that is profitable, right? Not just busy, not just productive, but profitable, right? So I think I hear a collective amen around the world right now, right? And the only way to get that right is to know your numbers, right? So that's coming down the pike. There's a little teaser for you. Keep your ears and eyes open for the Remarkable Money program. So one of the fruit of that project is this bonus system that we've created, this remarkable bonus system. And there's a bonus system worksheet, and then there's also scorecards that are associated with this. And Dr. Pete, I know we gave away the bonus system worksheet on the last episode. Today we're going to be giving out the scorecard for you to use, because when we're talking about management by objectives versus management by expectations and agreements, both of these tools use the scorecard and KPIs, but really management by objectives is driven by the scorecard, right? So it's driven by the scorecard, whereas management by expectations and agreements is really driven by top line revenue growth, right? So if I could just peel this back a little bit, let's pull back to 30,000 feet and recognize that there are two different management styles, as you alluded to, Dr. Pete. Neither one of them are better than the other. It's just that one is more appropriate than the other in different scenarios, dealing with different roles and different people. So you got to take into account a few things. The culture of your business, because you show me how the money works and I'm going to show you the culture of your business, right? So is it a more relational environment or is it a more transactional environment? And you probably already know without me explaining what that is. And if you're a chiropractor listening to this, chances are you probably fault on the side of the relational environment, right? So transactional environment just suggests that you need to do a better job of creating clear expectations and agreements, having them be quantified and be objective, and most importantly, capturing them in writing, right? So, because as DeMartini always says, if it ain't written down, it doesn't exist, right? So I'm sure his grammar is better than mine on that one, but you got to write them down, right? And of course, in this conversation, when we're talking about goals around our KPIs, which are assigned based on a role, of course, it's the scorecard, Dr. Pete, that you would use to capture all of this information. So let's just all agree that neither one of these systems are better than the other. It's just that one may be more appropriate given the culture of your business, also the position that we're talking about. So when we talk about check-in CAs and check-out CAs and tech CAs, it's like that management by expectations and agreements, I think works great, right? So where everybody's oriented towards the same goal, which is increasing top line revenue. I love that, right? When you're dealing with like a business builder associate doctor, or maybe a COO in your business who actually owns or is accountable around things like the P&L and really driving practice growth, it's more of a production-driven relationship, right? And these people are usually hardwired in a way where they're energized by opportunity. They want a sliding scale. They want to know the better I do, Dr. Pete, the better I do.
Yeah, I think this is a who question, right? Not necessarily a how. It's going to be a how as well, but getting the right people in the right roles, doing the right work the right way, and then compensating them right. It's a who question. It really is. And again, Doc Stephen, like you said, regardless, both scenarios, whether it's management by expectations and agreements, more of that relational model, and it's still where to invest the resources, the time, energy, focus, and money. It's still about driving growth. As a CEO, it's harnessing the energy, the time, energy, and focus of your team in a productive way in both scenarios. And I love comparing, looking at a bureaucratic business model versus the entrepreneurial model. In the bureaucratic model, it's really based, it's the time and energy economy. In the entrepreneurial economy, it's really about production. So regardless of how you're compensating in an entrepreneurial business, when I hire someone to come onto my team, the expectation is always growth. I'm bringing you in to help us grow the business. And that really is important to keep in the forefront of our mind. And then how we reward or compensate and then reward, where our bonus would be a reward on top of the paying our people well, that's where we're going to get specific here today. So, Dr. Stephen, we're talking about specific employees, specific team members who are going to be compensated in a way that are driven to produce. So it's production-driven model. This is a production-driven model that's transactional in nature, that is looking at its specific objectives. Now, we are not saying that a check-in or a check-out or a check-stay should not have a scorecard. We're not saying that. We're saying we're looking at specific team members who also have a scorecard, whose compensation is going to be based on specifically objectives that they now have agreed to, because we set the expectation at the beginning that this is how it would be done. So again, go back to that previous episode. We went through that, what that would look like at the beginning of the relationship. So this is based on agreements that have been set. This is the expectations that we have made. We've set the expectations. We've had an agreement on what that looks like. And now we're operating in a state of integrity because it's what we have said and it's now what we will do. So go back and listen to the budgeting section if you want to look at that, listen to that, and how we actually determine how this would happen, the distributions, and when that should happen. So, Dr. Stephen, we got to get the right people in the right roles, doing the right work the right way, and then compensating them right. So let's talk about now how we can do this. So based on the management by objectives, what can this look like? So we're going to do a giveaway at the end. Obviously, you can pick it up right now. It's the scorecard if you don't have that already. If you're a regular listener, hopefully you have the scorecards. If you're a coaching client, you should be using those scorecards. If you don't, make sure you pick up the scorecard because we're going to speak to it with the scorecard. So pull out the scorecard. We're going to speak directly to how you actually do this, Dr. Stephen.
Yeah. So I love that you went there, Dr. Pete. It's, everyone gets a scorecard. Like if you get a paycheck from me, you get a scorecard. Like I love to say my landscaper gets a scorecard, right? So everyone gets a scorecard, right? So when we talk about management by expectations and agreement, yes, they get a scorecard and we capture those expectations and those agreements on their scorecard. Now, if everyone does their job well and they all reach their goals, guess what's going to happen to the top line revenue? Top line revenue is going to go up, providing you modeled your business properly. And when the top line revenue goes up, everybody gets bonus based on that expectation and those agreements on the scorecard, right? So that is sort of expectations and agreements for dummies right now. It's just one number, everyone's driving revenue, right? It's a perfect win-win-win. When we talk about management by objectives, let's narrow this focus. Everyone gets a scorecard, right? So now you take the scorecard and you say, okay, because you are a production-driven team member, like a business building associate doctor versus a caregiver, a business builder associate doctor, or maybe you're the COO, right? And you're a production-driven role in the business. I want your compensation tied to your productivity. And guess what? The right person in those roles will also want that as well. They'll be energized by that opportunity. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do your bonuses based on your productivity through your scorecard. In other words, have you reached your goals on your scorecard? So in the TRP system, as you probably know already, we have 5 KPIs per employee, right? That's the number we like, 5 KPIs. And where do those KPIs come from? We look at a job description and you can see there's a bulleted job description. Those are a collection of responsibilities. And each one of those responsibilities is measurable. That measurement creates a key performance indicator or a KPI. For each one of those responsibilities, we are going to measure your productivity and we're going to set a goal for each of those KPIs, right? So now we have a goal for 5 KPIs. So now you have 5 goals. Now, in management by objectives, you would say these are your 5 objectives to hit these 5 goals, right? So if you get 5 out of 5 of your objectives, if you hit 5 out of 5 of these goals, you get 100% of your bonus. If you only get 4 out of 5, then you get 80% of your bonus. If you only get 3 out of 5, then you get 60% of your bonus. If you only get 2 out of 5, you get 40% of your. If you get 1 out of the 5, you get 20% of your bonus, right? So it's totally performance based around you achieving your goals. Now that's one way to do it. You could be a hard ass on this and really drive this thing and put some teeth on it and say, listen, 5 out of 5, you get 100% of your goals. You get 5 out of 5 of your goals, you'll get 100% of your bonus. If you only get 4 out of 5 of your goals, you get 50% of your bonus. 3 out of 5, steak knives, right? So 2 out of 5, nada. 1 out of 5, nada. And those are a bad review, right? Now you're on probation for the quarter, right? And you better make sure that you get on track with your goals in the next quarter. So Dr. Pete, there's ways you can see like this can really have some teeth to it. And it's amazing how it can energize the right person based on how that person is hardwired and their money blueprint. Like how do they relate to taking on the risk of saying, yeah, you know what? Throw me a big bonus. Tell me what my goals are. Let me ring that bell. I'm going to ring 5 out of 5 and get 100% of my bonus.
And so the beautiful thing about this, what I like about the management by objectives is if you follow our methodology and how we teach to do it, the structure is that, you have daily huddles, right? You have weekly team meetings, you have monthly meetups. So it's not that this is going to get away from you or them. Like this is something that when you have visibility and accountability, right? That's where the magic happens. And so the beautiful thing of management by objectives is it's not that, you're setting it and then you're forgetting it and then you're hoping. You're keeping this in the forefront of your mind and their mind, and they know exactly where they're at any given day, week, month. And then so by the time we get to the end of the quarter, there's no surprises here, right? So you want to talk about morale and keeping energy up and really staying focused and really supporting someone. I like to ask two questions at the monthly meetup. It's where did you win, and how can I help you continue to win? If you didn't win, if the answer is, well, I'm not, it says, well, how can I help you, right? How can I help you succeed in this next month? So we're always coming in with a helping hand. We're always setting the expectation that there's going to be winning and victory. But if there's not for some reason, then I'm here to help you. How can I help you? And they need to be able to report to us two things: how did they do and where they need help. And so in order to keep everyone focused on achieving their goals, their objectives, again, accountability, one person is accountable. Responsibility, everyone's responsible. So we know now that some of the objectives that are on my scorecard, other people have influence over. Exactly. And that's why we meet every week as a team. That's why we have issues and we solve and we have problem solving time in our weekly team meetings. It's why we train as a team like lives depend on it, because they do. We understand there's no siloing going on here, that we all help each other. But this is a really important point as a leader, to recognize that when you are managing by objectives, the goal is not to, it's to support them, it's to help them feel supported and help them win. Like you said, Dr. Stephen, I'm happy if I pay out my bonus budget for the quarter, for the year, because that means we hit our goals, which means we have grown and we have had victory. So again, from a mindset perspective and a mindset shift, we need to set the belief system saying, I love paying bonuses. One of my favorite things to do is to distribute bonuses to my team. And in order to do that, I want to make sure I stay right on top of the objectives for each and every person, because I'm energized by that. If you're a good manager, let's call it your office manager or COO, one of your KPIs is that your team hits their KPIs. So now I'm focusing on all of the team members succeeding, because I know that means I'm succeeding. So this is the way all the boats rise in this model, is that, again, we don't lose sight of what's important now, and we keep everyone focused and we keep everyone productive. And to me, that's how you keep morale high, culture high, and that's how you win.
I want to double click on something you just said there, Dr. Pete, where you're talking about, it's my role to make sure that everybody's winning on the team, right? So remember, as a leader, as a business owner, it's our job description is to create an environment where everyone is more successful with us than without us. And they know that. So what does it mean to you? What does that look like to you? Like, how does it hit the ground? It hits the ground right here. One of the ways in finances. Do you know your team's personal, professional, and financial goals, PPFG, right? Do you know, is that part of the conversation? One of the ways that you help them reach their personal, professional, and financial goals is through the bonus system, through the incentives. So now you've got an intrinsic alignment between their personal, professional, and financial goals and the business growth. This is where this conversation lives, right here. And they know, holy crap, I'm so glad I work for Dr. Pete, because there's no way I'd be able to do this while out on my own. That's the idea. That's the win-win-win. And when you model the business properly, you know that when you're writing big checks, you're stoked, right? So I got my stoked shirt on right here from Dr. Sebastian, got me this in Puerto Rico, one of my favorite board shops, Stoked, at Maria's on the North Pacific side, or the northwestern corner of Puerto Rico. So you're stoked if you are writing big bonus checks. And, I told this story last night in a mastermind that, I can remember back in the day, my wife, Camilla, God bless her, was the one who was managing the books and cutting checks, right? So she's the controller. And she was freaking out. When your wife's freaking out, you walk in the room and your wife's freaking out and the checkbook's out. That's never just a good scene, right? I'm like, baby, what's up? What's going on? What's the matter? And she's like, oh, these bonus checks. It's like, we got these huge bonus checks going on. It's like, and I'm like, yes, fantastic. And she looked at me and she's like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, listen, sweetheart, the way we have this business modeled, if we're cutting those bonus checks, trust me, we won big, right? So everybody's got to understand that that perspective shift if you model your business properly, which is what we're trying to teach you, which we were talking about in the last episode. We talked about how do you arrive at a budget, which is my objective. My goal is to invest this much money, 5% of my top line revenue goal, in my bonusing system to energize my team, right? So think about this, just 5%, right? To grow the business, right? So, and then how do I figure out, who's eligible, right? So how do I set base case scenarios so I land on goals that are, we're growing and going, right? So how do I set aside the amount of monies that are distributed across my team members and who's eligible, right? So this is all modeling, guys, right? So you're learning how to set up a model where, trust me, you're going to win, right? So you know the expression, we're in the business of saving lives, right? And when business is good, everyone wins. Well, here's the manifestation of that when you talk about the financial piece of it, the M in the equals MC squared equation of energy and enthusiasm equals money times crucial communications. Guys, you got to get this bonus system right. And we've just given you the formula to make sure that you are energizing your team so that everybody wins.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.